Leo had always been a man who preferred solitude. Nestled deep in the heart of an ancient forest, his cabin stood like a quiet sentinel against the backdrop of towering trees and whispering winds. It was far from the noise of cities, far from people, and exactly where Leo felt most at peace. He spent his days tending to his small garden, reading by the fireplace, or simply sitting on the porch listening to the symphony of nature. But there was something unusual about this forest, something Leo couldn't quite put his finger on. It started with the howls. Every full moon, without fail, the eerie sound would echo through the woods. At first, Leo thought it was just wolves hunting or communicating with one another. After all, forests were wild places, and such sounds weren't uncommon. But over time, he began noticing patterns that didn't add up. For instance, despite hearing the howls so close to his cabin, he never saw any signs of wolf tracks near his property come morning. Stranger still, whenever he found traces of intruders, broken branches, disturbed soil, even claw marks gouged into tree trunks, they seemed deliberately stopped before reaching his home. One particularly bright night, curiosity got the better of him. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting its silvery glow across the landscape. Leo grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, determined to investigate what was happening around his cabin. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and damp earth. As he moved cautiously toward the edge of the clearing, the hairs on the back of his neck prickled. Something, or someone, was out there. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the darkness. Leo froze, gripping the flashlight tightly as he scanned the area. His heart pounded in his chest as shadows shifted between the trees. Then, out of nowhere, a blur of movement erupted into the clearing. A massive creature lunged forward, its sleek body glinting under the moonlight. It wasn't alone. Several smaller shapes followed, snarling viciously. Leo's breath caught in his throat. Wolves. There were at least 5 of them, their eyes gleaming with hunger as they circled something, or someone, in the center of the clearing. Before he could react, another figure emerged from the shadows. This one was different, larger, faster, and radiating an almost otherworldly energy. With a single leap, it pounced onto one of the wolves, pinning it down effortlessly. Its claws flashed like silver daggers as it tore through the attacker with terrifying precision. The fight was over almost as quickly as it began. One by one, the remaining wolves retreated, disappearing into the forest with defeated yelps. Leo stared in awe at the victorious figure standing amidst the chaos. It was humanoid but not entirely human. Its fur shimmered faintly, catching the light of the moon, and its golden eyes burned with intensity. Was it a werewolf? Before Leo could process what he was seeing, the creature turned its head sharply, locking gazes with him. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. He could feel the weight of its stare, as if it were trying to decide whether he posed a threat. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature bolted into the woods, vanishing without a trace. Shaken but unable to sleep, Leo stayed up the rest of the night, replaying the scene in his mind. Who, or what, was that? And why had it chosen to protect his cabin? Over the next few days, he searched the area for clues, but found nothing conclusive. No tracks, no evidence of a struggle beyond the claw marks already etched into the trees. It was as though the entire encounter had been a figment of his imagination. But Leo knew better. Something was out there, watching over him. Every full moon, the same pattern repeated itself. Distant howls, followed by silence. Each time, he would wake up to find fresh signs of conflict near his property, yet no harm ever came to him or his cabin. Whoever, or whatever, was protecting him clearly didn't want to be seen. Despite his fear, Leo couldn't shake the feeling of gratitude. Whoever this mysterious protector was, they were keeping him safe. But questions lingered in his mind. Why did they care about him? What was their connection to this forest? And most importantly, why wouldn't they let him get closer? The next full moon arrived, and Leo was determined not to let the mysterious protector slip away again. For days, he had thought about the creature that had saved him, its speed, its strength, and those piercing golden eyes that seemed to see straight into his soul. He couldn't shake the image from his mind. Was it truly a werewolf? If so, why was it protecting him? And why did it vanish every time without giving him a chance to thank it, or even ask who it was? Leo spent hours preparing for the night ahead. He cleaned his flashlight, made sure his bow odds were sturdy enough for walking in the woods, and even packed a small notebook in case he needed to jot down details. Most importantly, he steeled himself mentally. This time, he wouldn't just stand on the sidelines and watch. He would step out into the clearing, face whatever was out there, and try to make contact. As dusk fell, the forest grew eerily quiet. The usual chirping of crickets and rustling of leaves seemed muted, as though nature itself was holding its breath. Leo sat by the window, staring at the horizon, where the sun dipped below the treetops. When the first rays of moonlight spilled across the sky, he grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of pine. Leo moved cautiously toward the edge of the clearing, his flashlight casting long shadows on the ground. Every sound, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant hoot of an owl, made him jump. His heart raced with anticipation and fear. What if the creature didn't want to be seen? What if it attacked him instead? Then it happened. A low growl rumbled through the trees, followed by the unmistakable sound of snapping twigs. Leo froze, gripping the flashlight tightly as he scanned the darkness. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared between the trunks, watching him intently. They were closer than before, almost unnervingly so. Slowly, the figure emerged from the shadows, a towering silhouette with sleek fur that shimmered like liquid gold under the moonlight. It was her, the same creature from the last encounter. Leo's breath hitched as he took in her appearance. She stood upright, balancing on two powerful legs, but her body was unmistakably wolf-like. Her claws glinted menacingly, and her ears twitched at every sound. Yet there was something oddly human about her too, the way she tilted her head slightly, studying him with curiosity rather than hostility. Before Leo could say anything, another noise broke the silence. A pack of wolves burst into the clearing, their teeth bared and snarls filling the air. Without hesitation, the werewolf girl sprang into action. She moved with incredible speed, her movements fluid and precise. With a single swipe of her clawed hand, she sent one wolf tumbling backward. Another lunged at her, but she dodged effortlessly, countering with a blow that knocked it unconscious. Leo watched in awe as she fought off the entire pack, her golden fur catching the moonlight with every leap and strike. Despite the chaos around them, she never once looked away from him for too long, as if ensuring he was safe. When the last wolf fled into the woods, she turned back to face him, panting heavily. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Leo felt rooted to the spot, unsure whether to move or speak. Finally, summoning all his courage, he took a hesitant step forward. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice trembling. "You've been protecting me. I don't know why, but thank you." The werewolf girl didn't respond immediately. Instead, she lowered herself slightly, her posture relaxed but cautious. Her golden eyes locked onto his, searching for something. Trust, perhaps, or understanding. Then, slowly, she raised a clawed hand and pointed toward the cabin. It was a gesture, clear yet enigmatic, as if she wanted him to go back inside. "I'm not leaving," Leo replied firmly, shaking his head. "I want to know who you are. Why are you doing this?" Her expression softened, but only for a moment. Before Leo could take another step closer, she turned abruptly and disappeared into the woods, moving faster than his eyes could follow. 1 second she was there. The next, she was gone, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of earth and musk. Leo stood alone in the clearing, his mind racing. He replayed the encounter over and over in his head, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She hadn't attacked him, nor had she shown any sign of aggression. In fact, her actions suggested she was deliberately keeping him safe. But why? And why did she refuse to stay long enough for him to ask questions? Over the next few days, Leo became obsessed with finding answers. He scoured books on local legends, searched online forums for stories about mythical creatures, and even revisited old tales told by the previous owner of the cabin. None of it gave him a clear explanation, but one thing became increasingly obvious. The werewolf girl wasn't just some random guardian. There was purpose behind her actions, and somehow it was tied to him. Each night, Leo left small offerings outside his cabin. Apples, blankets, even notes scribbled hastily in pen. "Who are you?" One note read, "Why do you protect me?" Another simply said, "Please talk to me." At first, the gifts remained untouched, and Leo began to think she might ignore them entirely. But then, one morning, he found a note tucked under a rock near the porch. Written in shaky handwriting were two words, "Stay safe." Leo's heart skipped a beat. It was the first direct communication he'd received from her, however cryptic it might be. Clutching the note in his hand, he smiled despite himself. Maybe breaking through her barriers wouldn't be as impossible as he thought. From that day on, Leo resolved to keep trying. Whatever secret she carried, whatever reason she had for protecting him, he was determined to uncover them. Little did he know, their encounters were only the beginning of a much larger mystery, one that would test his courage, challenge his beliefs, and ultimately change everything he thought he knew about the world and himself. Over the weeks that followed, Leo's life began to revolve around the full moon. Each month, he prepared meticulously for the night when the mysterious werewolf girl would appear, leaving him gifts and notes in hopes of forging a connection. Though her responses were rare and cryptic, they fueled his determination. The two-word message, "Stay safe," had given him hope that communication wasn't entirely out of reach. He clung to it like a lifeline, replaying those words in his mind whenever doubt crept in. The pattern became predictable, yet no less intriguing. Every full moon, the forest came alive with howls and growls, signaling the arrival of predators drawn inexplicably to his cabin. And every time, the werewolf girl showed up to fend them off, moving with an elegance and power that left Leo breathless. Despite her silence, her actions spoke volumes. She never strayed far from his property, always positioning herself between him and danger. It was as if she had claimed his cabin, and him, as something worth protecting. But why? That question haunted Leo. What made him special? Was it coincidence, or was there a deeper reason behind her vigilance? These thoughts consumed him during the long days between full moons, driving him to dig deeper into the mystery surrounding her. One afternoon, while exploring the attic of his cabin, Leo stumbled upon an old wooden chest tucked away in a dusty corner. Its hinges creaked loudly as he opened it, revealing a collection of forgotten items. Faded photographs, brittle letters, and a leather-bound journal. Curious, he flipped through the pages of the journal, discovering entries written by the previous owner of the cabin. The handwriting was shaky but legible, detailing years of solitude spent in the forest. As Leo read further, his eyes widened. The journal contained references to local legends, stories passed down through generations about a cursed family tied to the forest. According to the writer, this family had been bound by an ancient pact to protect certain individuals deemed worthy by fate. In return for their service, these guardians were granted immense strength and speed, but at a cost. They lived lives of isolation, unable to form lasting connections or escape their duty until their debt was repaid. Leo's heart raced as he pieced together the clues. Could the werewolf girl be part of this cursed lineage? Was she bound to protect him because of some unseen connection? The idea seemed far-fetched, yet it explained so much. Her unwavering dedication, her reluctance to engage directly, and the sense of purpose that radiated from her every movement. Determined to learn more, Leo decided to test his theory. On the next full moon, he set out earlier than usual, armed not just with a flashlight, but also with a notebook filled with questions. He wanted answers, not just for himself but for her. If she truly was trapped in this cycle of protection, then maybe he could help free her. That evening, the forest felt heavier than usual, its shadows stretching longer across the ground. The air carried a strange tension, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath. Leo waited patiently on the porch, listening to the distant howls that signaled the start of another night of chaos. When the first growl echoed nearby, he stepped into the clearing, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. She appeared moments later, her golden fur glowing faintly under the moonlight. This time, however, she hesitated before charging into battle. Her gaze lingered on Leo, almost as if she were weighing whether he posed a threat, or perhaps wondering why he kept showing up despite the danger. "Why are you here?" Leo asked softly, taking a cautious step forward. "What's your name? Why do you keep coming back?" For a moment, she didn't move. Then, with a flicker of emotion in her golden eyes, she let out a low growl, not aggressive, but firm. It was a warning, clear and unambiguous. "Stay back." Leo obeyed, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I just want to understand. You've saved me so many times. I owe you that much." Her expression softened ever so slightly, and for the first time, Leo noticed a hint of vulnerability beneath her fierce exterior. She glanced toward the cabin, then back at him, as if considering his words. Before he could say anything else, the sound of snapping branches broke the silence. A pack of wolves emerged from the trees, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Without hesitation, the werewolf girl sprang into action, her movements fluid and precise. She fought with unmatched skill, dispatching each wolf with swift, calculated strikes. Leo watched in awe, marveling at her grace even as fear gripped his chest. What kind of creature could possess such strength, and yet choose to use it for good? When the last wolf retreated into the forest, she turned back to face him. Her breathing was heavy, her body tense, but her gaze remained fixed on him. Slowly, she approached, stopping just a few feet away. For a heartbeat, Leo thought she might finally speak. Instead, she lowered her head slightly, almost like a bow, before turning and disappearing into the shadows. Back on the porch, Leo sank onto the steps, his mind racing. There was no denying it now. The werewolf girl was more than just a guardian. She was a being caught between worlds, burdened by a duty she couldn't escape. But what did that mean for him? Was he merely a pawn in some larger cosmic game, or was there a deeper connection tying them together? The next morning, Leo found another note tucked under a rock near the porch. This one was different from the others. Longer, more deliberate. Written in the same shaky handwriting as before, it read, "Do not follow me." Leo frowned, turning the note over in his hands. The warning was clear, but it only deepened his resolve. Whoever, or whatever, she was, she needed help. And if staying safe meant standing idly by while she fought alone, then he refused to comply. From that day on, Leo dedicated himself to uncovering the truth. He pored over every scrap of information he could find about the cursed family mentioned in the journal. He mapped out patterns in her appearances, noting subtle changes in her behavior each time they crossed paths. Most importantly, he continued leaving offerings outside his cabin, hoping to build trust slowly but surely. Each gift brought him closer to understanding her. Sometimes, she would leave small signs in return. A claw mark carved into a tree trunk, a tuft of golden fur resting on the porch railing. Other times, she ignored his efforts entirely, vanishing without acknowledgement. But Leo didn't give up. He knew instinctively that patience was key. Breaking through her barriers wouldn't happen overnight, but it would happen. Unbeknownst to him, however, forces beyond his comprehension were beginning to stir in the forest. Shadows moved where none should exist, whispers echoed through the trees, and dark figures lingered at the edges of his property. Whatever secrets the werewolf girl guarded, they were attracting attention, and not all of it was friendly. Leo didn't realize it yet, but their encounters were about to take a dangerous turn. The forest held more mysteries than he could imagine, and soon, both he and the werewolf girl would be forced to confront truths neither of them was ready to face. Leo's determination to connect with the werewolf girl grew stronger with each passing full moon. The notes she occasionally left behind, always short, always cryptic, only fueled his curiosity. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. She wasn't just a guardian or a protector. She was someone trapped in a role she hadn't chosen. And for reasons he didn't fully understand, she had taken it upon herself to shield him from harm. But why? That question haunted Leo day and night. Was he truly worthy of her protection, as the old journal suggested? Or was there something else binding them together? Something deeper, older, and far more mysterious. Determined to break through her barriers, Leo devised a new plan. Instead of waiting passively for her to appear during the next full moon, he decided to take a bold step. He would go out unarmed, vulnerable, and open. A gesture meant to show her he trusted her completely. If she wanted him safe, then perhaps showing her he believed in her intentions would encourage her to trust him in return. The night of the full moon arrived, and Leo prepared carefully. He left his flashlight inside, choosing instead to rely on the silver glow of the moonlight. Clad in a simple jacket and sturdy boots, he stepped outside and stood in the middle of the clearing near his cabin. The forest was eerily quiet, the usual rustling of leaves replaced by an almost oppressive stillness. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Minutes passed, stretching into what felt like hours. Leo's heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to move. He kept his arms at his sides, his posture relaxed yet alert. The message was clear. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't running. He was here because he wanted answers, and because he wanted to thank her. Then, finally, he heard it, the faint crunch of leaves underfoot. A shadow moved between the trees, hesitating at the edge of the clearing. Slowly, the werewolf girl emerged, her golden fur shimmering under the moonlight. Her movements were cautious, her eyes scanning the area as though searching for threats. When she saw Leo standing alone and unarmed, she froze. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Leo could see the conflict in her expression, a mix of caution, curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite place. Determination, maybe, or longing. "I'm not going anywhere," Leo said softly, breaking the silence. His voice carried no fear, only sincerity. "You've been protecting me every month, risking yourself for me. I don't know why, but I want to understand. I want to help you." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a hesitant step forward, her claws glinting faintly in the moonlight. Then another. With each step, Leo held his ground, resisting the urge to flinch or back away. Finally, she stopped just a few feet away, tilting her head slightly as if studying him. Her golden eyes burned with intensity, piercing through him in a way that made his breath catch. For the first time, Leo noticed how human they looked, not just in shape, but in emotion. There was pain there, loneliness, and beneath it all, a flicker of hope. "I won't hurt you," Leo continued, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. I need to know who you are, why you're doing this. You don't have to stay silent forever." For a moment, she seemed to consider his words. Then, slowly, she lowered herself slightly, her posture softening. It wasn't submission. It was acceptance. She wasn't attacking, nor was she fleeing. For the first time, she allowed him to get closer. Encouraged, Leo took a small step forward. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling with gratitude. "Whatever your reasons are, whatever burden you carry, I'm grateful. But I can't keep letting you fight alone. Let me help you." Her ears twitched at his words, and for a fleeting second, Her lips parted as though she might speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she let out a low growl, soft, almost melodic, and turned her gaze toward the woods. It was a signal, clear and unambiguous. Danger was near. Leo followed her gaze, his heart skipping a beat. Shadows moved among the trees, darker than any natural silhouette should be. Growls echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Whatever was coming, it wasn't ordinary wolves. These creatures radiated malice, their presence sending chills down Leo's spine. Without hesitation, the werewolf girl positioned herself between him and the approaching threat. Her body tensed, her muscles coiled like springs ready to spring into action. Leo instinctively reached for her, wanting to pull her back, but she batted his hand away with surprising gentleness. Her message was clear: stay back. Stay safe. Reluctantly, Leo obeyed, retreating to the edge of the clearing. But he didn't leave. He couldn't. Not when she was putting herself in harm's way for him once again. The battle that followed was unlike anything Leo had witnessed before. The dark figures emerged from the shadows, their forms shifting unnaturally as they lunged at the werewolf girl. They weren't animals. They were something else entirely, their glowing red eyes filled with hatred and purpose. Yet despite their numbers, she fought with unmatched ferocity, her claws slicing through the air with precision. Leo watched in awe and terror as she defended the clearing, her movements fluid and graceful even against overwhelming odds. Each strike was deliberate, each dodge calculated. She was fighting not just for herself, but for him, for the man who had dared to stand openly in the moonlight and ask for her trust. When the last figure retreated into the shadows, the clearing fell silent once more. The werewolf girl stood panting, her fur matted with dirt and streaks of blood. Despite her injuries, she remained upright, her golden eyes scanning the area one final time to ensure the danger was gone. Then, slowly, she turned to face Leo. Her expression was unreadable, but her body language spoke volumes. She was exhausted, yes, but also triumphant. And for the first time, she didn't flee immediately. Instead, she took a hesitant step toward him, her gaze softening. "You saved me again," Leo said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you don't have to do this alone anymore. Let me help you." She didn't respond verbally, but her actions said enough. Slowly, she raised a clawed hand and touched his shoulder lightly, her touch surprisingly gentle. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, a sign that, for the first time, she was willing to let him in, even if only a little. Before Leo could say anything else, she pulled away and disappeared into the woods, vanishing as quickly as she had come. But this time, she left something behind. On the ground where she had stood was a single tuft of golden fur, placed deliberately within his reach. Leo picked it up, cradling it gently in his palm. It was a token, a promise. Their connection, fragile as it was, had deepened. She had let him closer, even if only for a moment, and that gave him hope. Over the days that followed, Leo pored over the old journal again, searching for clues about the cursed family and their guardianship. He began experimenting with ways to communicate more effectively, leaving not just notes but drawings and symbols near his cabin. Each offering was an attempt to bridge the gap between them, to show her he was willing to meet her halfway. And while the werewolf girl remained elusive, her presence became more tangible. Tracks appeared near the cabin that hadn't been there before. Scratches carved into tree trunks formed patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Even the notes she left grew longer, though they remained cryptic. One such note read, "Trust is earned." Leo smiled as he tucked it into his pocket. He understood now. Trust wasn't something that could be forced. It had to be built, piece by piece. And though their journey was far from over, he knew they were making progress. Little did he realize, however, that the forces lurking in the forest weren't done testing them. Darker challenges lay ahead, ones that would push both him and the werewolf girl to their limits. But for now, Leo clung to the hope that their bond, fragile as it was, would be enough to withstand whatever came next. As the days passed, Leo became increasingly consumed by the mystery surrounding the werewolf girl. The clues she left behind, notes, symbols, and even tufts of golden fur, were like pieces of a puzzle he was desperate to solve. Each new discovery brought him closer to understanding her, but the bigger picture remained frustratingly out of reach. He knew there was more to her story than just protection. Something ancient and powerful tied them together, and uncovering it might be the key to freeing her from whatever curse bound her. Leo's research intensified. Every spare moment was spent poring over the old journal he'd found in the attic, searching for any mention of the cursed family or their guardianship. The entries were cryptic at best, filled with fragmented tales and half-formed warnings. One passage caught his attention repeatedly. The debt must be repaid in full. Only then will the chains break and the protector find peace. What did that mean? What kind of debt could bind someone, or something, for so long? And how was Leo connected to it? Driven by curiosity, Leo decided to expand his search beyond the journal. He visited the small town nearest to his cabin, hoping to find someone who might know more about the legends of the forest. The townsfolk were wary of outsiders, especially those asking questions about the woods, but after some persistence, an elderly woman named Mrs. Hargrove agreed to speak with him. Mrs. Hargrove lived in a tiny cottage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by shelves overflowing with books and trinkets. Her eyes sparkled with wisdom as she listened to Leo's story, nodding thoughtfully when he described the werewolf girl and the strange occurrences near his cabin. "You're talking about the guardians of the Vale," she said finally, her voice low and steady. "They've been part of these woods for centuries, though few people dare to speak of them anymore." "The guardians of the Vale," Leo repeated, leaning forward eagerly. "What are they?" "They're not human, not entirely," Mrs. Hargrove explained. "Long ago, a powerful family made a pact with forces beyond our understanding. In exchange for great power, they vowed to protect certain individuals chosen by fate. These chosen ones carry a spark, a mark of destiny, that makes them worthy of the guardian's protection." Leo frowned. "A mark of destiny? But I'm just me. I don't feel special. How could I possibly have this spark?" Mrs. Hargrove smiled faintly. "Not all marks are visible, young man. Some lie hidden within, waiting to be awakened. Perhaps your presence here isn't coincidence. Perhaps you were meant to uncover the truth." Her words lingered in Leo's mind as he returned to his cabin. If what she said was true, then the werewolf girl wasn't merely protecting him out of obligation. She was fulfilling a role she couldn't escape. And if Leo truly carried this mysterious mark, then maybe he had a role to play too. Maybe he could help her break free. Determined to test his theory, Leo began experimenting with ways to uncover his connection to the curse. He revisited the clearing where they often met, examining every inch of the ground for signs of unusual markings or patterns. He scoured the edges of the forest, searching for anything that might hint at the origin of the Guardian's Pact. One evening, while exploring a particularly dense patch of trees, Leo stumbled upon something unexpected: a circle of stones arranged in a perfect ring. At first glance, it looked like a natural formation, but closer inspection revealed intricate carvings etched into each stone. Symbols spiral across the surface, their designs eerily similar to the ones the werewolf girl sometimes left near his cabin. Leo's pulse quickened. This had to be significant. Could this be the site of the original pact? Was it the source of the curse binding the werewolf girl? He spent hours studying the stones, sketching the symbols into his notebook, and comparing them to the notes she'd left him. The patterns matched almost perfectly, confirming his suspicion. This place held the answers he sought, but accessing them wouldn't be easy. The next full moon arrived sooner than expected, and Leo prepared carefully. Armed with his flashlight, notebook, and sketches of the stone circle, he waited anxiously outside his cabin. When the familiar sound of growls echoed through the forest, he stepped into the clearing, calling out softly. "I need to show you something," he said as the werewolf girl emerged, her golden fur glowing under the moonlight. "It's important." She hesitated, her ears twitching as she studied him. For a moment, Leo feared she might bolt, but instead she lowered herself slightly, signaling she would listen. Quickly, he showed her the sketches of the stone circle, pointing toward the forest. "I think this is where it started. The curse, the pact, whatever binds you to me. If we go there together, maybe we can figure out how to break it." Her golden eyes widened, and for the first time, Leo saw a flicker of fear in her expression. She shook her head violently, stepping back as though rejecting the idea outright. "It's okay," Leo assured her, his voice gentle but firm. "I won't let anything happen to you. We're in this together." She didn't respond verbally, but her body language softened. Slowly, she nodded, her gaze locking onto his with a mixture of trust and determination. Together, they ventured into the forest, moving silently beneath the canopy of trees. The air grew heavier as they approached the stone circle, the atmosphere thick with tension. When they reached the site, the werewolf girl froze, her claws digging into the earth as she stared at the stones. Her reaction confirmed Leo's suspicions. This was the heart of the curse. "Do you recognize it?" Leo asked quietly. "Is this where it began?" She didn't answer, but her trembling form spoke volumes. Whatever memories or emotions the stones stirred within her, they were overwhelming. Leo placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what little comfort he could. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "Whatever happened here, we'll undo it, together." In response, she raised a clawed hand and touched one of the stones, tracing the carved symbols with care. As she did, a faint glow emanated from the circle, illuminating the clearing in an ethereal light. Words, not spoken aloud but felt deep within, filled Leo's mind. "Only sacrifice can sever the chain." The message sent a chill down Leo's spine. Sacrifice. What did that mean? Who, or what, would have to give something up to break the curse? Before he could ask, the glow faded, leaving the clearing dark once more. The werewolf girl turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she darted into the shadows, disappearing into the night. Alone again, Leo sank to his knees, his mind racing. The stone circle had given him a clue, but it only raised more questions. What kind of sacrifice was required? And who would have to make it? Over the following days, Leo wrestled with the implications. The phrase echoed in his thoughts constantly, haunting him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the answer lay within himself, that he might be the one called upon to pay the price. But despite the uncertainty, one thing was clear. The werewolf girl trusted him now. Their bond, fragile as it was, had grown stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Little did Leo realize, however, that the forces opposing them were growing bolder. Shadows moved closer to his cabin, whispers echoed louder in the forest, and dark figures began appearing even during nights when the moon wasn't full. The curse wasn't just a relic of the past. It was alive, aware, and determined to keep its hold. The forest had always been a place of mystery and danger, but now it felt alive with hostility. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, even during the day, and whispers drifted through the trees like ghostly echoes. Leo could feel it, the presence of something darker, more sinister than anything he'd encountered before. Whatever force bound the werewolf girl to her curse was growing restless, and it wasn't content to let them uncover its secrets without resistance. Leo tried to ignore the creeping unease as he went about his daily routine, but the signs were impossible to overlook. Strange figures began appearing at the edges of his property, tall, faceless silhouettes that watched silently from the tree line. Their movements were unnatural, jerky yet deliberate, as if they weren't fully part of this world. Sometimes, Leo would wake in the middle of the night to find claw marks gouged into the ground near his cabin or faint footprints leading away into the woods. Each time, the message was clear. They were being watched. But the worst came on a rare blood moon, a phenomenon that bathed the forest in an eerie crimson glow. Blood moons were uncommon, and according to Mrs. Hargrove's warnings, they amplified the power of curses and pacts. Leo hadn't realized how significant the timing was until he stepped outside that night and saw the werewolf girl stumble into the clearing, her golden fur matted with blood and dirt. She was injured, badly. Her usually graceful movements were labored, and she winced with every step. When she collapsed near the edge of the clearing, Leo rushed to her side, his heart pounding with fear. Up close, he could see deep gashes across her arms and legs, some still oozing dark red liquid. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and her golden eyes flickered weakly as she looked up at him. "They're coming," she rasped, her voice barely audible. It was the first time she'd spoken directly to him, and the sound sent shivers down his spine, not because it was menacing, but because it carried so much pain. "They'll kill us both." "Who?" Leo asked urgently, kneeling beside her. "Who's coming?" Her response was interrupted by a low growl emanating from the woods. The sound was unlike anything Leo had ever heard, deep, guttural, and filled with malice. Slowly, shadows began to move between the trees, coalescing into shapes that defied logic. These weren't ordinary predators. Their forms shifted unnaturally, limbs elongating and contorting as they advanced. Their glowing red eyes locked onto Leo and the werewolf girl, radiating pure hatred. Without hesitation, Leo helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as best he could. "We need to get inside," he whispered, glancing toward the cabin. She didn't argue, leaning heavily on him as they staggered toward safety. Behind them, the creatures followed, their snarls growing louder with each passing second. Once inside, Leo bolted the door and dragged furniture across it, creating a makeshift barricade. He set the werewolf girl down gently on the floor, grabbing a first aid kit from the shelf. As he cleaned her wounds, she flinched but didn't pull away, her golden eyes fixed on him with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "What happened out there?" Leo asked softly, wrapping bandages around her arm. "Why are they after you?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. Then, in halting words, she began to explain. "I broke the rules," she said, her voice strained. "I let you get too close. They don't want anyone knowing about the curse or trying to break it." Leo's stomach sank. "So it's my fault, because I've been asking questions, trying to help." "No," she replied quickly, shaking her head. "It's not your fault. This has been building for years. The curse grows stronger with every full moon, drawing more attention from whatever made me." She paused, her expression darkening. "They're testing us, seeing if we're strong enough to fight back." Leo clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. "Then we'll fight back. Together, whatever it takes." Her lips curved into a faint smile, though it was tinged with sadness. "You don't understand. Breaking the curse isn't just about finding answers. It's about sacrifice, and I don't know if either of us is ready for what that means." Before Leo could respond, a loud crash echoed outside. One of the shadowy figures had slammed into the door, splintering the wood. Leo scrambled to his feet, grabbing a fire poker from the hearth as a makeshift weapon. He knew it wouldn't do much against creatures like these, but it was better than nothing. The attacks came relentlessly, each impact shaking the cabin to its foundation. Inside, the werewolf girl struggled to stand, her injuries making movement difficult. But when another crash nearly shattered the door, she let out a low growl and pushed herself upright. Her body shimmered briefly as she transformed partially, claws extending and muscles rippling beneath her skin. "I can hold them off," she said firmly, stepping toward the door. "But you need to stay safe." "No way," Leo shot back, gripping the fire poker tightly. "I'm not letting you face this alone. Not again." For a moment, their eyes met, and Leo saw something in her gaze he hadn't noticed before: admiration. She nodded once, acknowledging his determination, then turned to face the door as it finally gave way. The creatures poured into the cabin, their twisted forms writhing and snapping. The werewolf girl sprang into action, moving faster than Leo thought possible despite her injuries. Her claws sliced through the air, tearing into the shadowy figures with precision. Leo joined the fray, swinging the fire poker wildly and doing his best to keep the creatures at bay. But they were outnumbered. For every creature they defeated, two more took its place. The cabin was in chaos. Furniture overturned and walls cracked under the relentless assault. Just when it seemed hopeless, the werewolf girl let out a piercing howl, her voice resonating through the forest like a call to arms. Suddenly, the tide began to turn. The remaining creatures froze, their glowing red eyes darting nervously toward the windows. A low rumble shook the ground outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of thunder. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the clearing and revealing a massive figure standing at the edge of the woods. It was another werewolf, larger and fiercer than any Leo had seen before. Its fur was jet black, and its eyes burned with an otherworldly intensity. With a deafening roar, it charged into the fray, scattering the shadowy creatures with brutal efficiency. Within moments, the attackers retreated into the forest, leaving behind only silence. Breathing heavily, Leo turned to the werewolf girl, who was staring at the newcomer with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The black-furred werewolf approached slowly, its gaze fixed on her. When it spoke, its voice was deep and commanding. "You've done well, sister," it rumbled. "But the battle isn't over. The curse is unraveling, and those who enforce it will stop at nothing to maintain control." The werewolf girl nodded grimly. "What do we do?" The black werewolf glanced at Leo, studying him intently. Then, after a long pause, it spoke again. "Only one thing remains, the ritual. It must be performed on the next full moon, or all will be lost." Leo frowned, stepping forward. "What ritual? What does it involve?" The black werewolf's gaze softened slightly, though it remained intense. "It requires the ultimate sacrifice. One of you must give up something precious to sever the chain binding her. Only then will the curse be broken." Leo's heart sank. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made the reality hit hard. Sacrifice. Whatever it meant, it wouldn't come easily. As the black werewolf disappeared into the forest, Leo turned to the werewolf girl, who was watching him with a mixture of hope and fear. "We'll figure this out," he promised, his voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "Whatever it takes, we'll do it together." The days leading up to the next full moon passed in a blur for Leo. Every moment was consumed by preparation, research, and quiet reflection. The ritual, the key to breaking the curse, loomed large in his mind, but its details remained frustratingly vague. All he knew was that it required sacrifice, something precious given way, willingly to sever the chain binding the werewolf girl to her fate. Leo wrestled with the implications. What did precious mean? Was it physical, like an object of great value? Or was it something deeper, something personal, emotional, or even existential? He couldn't shake the feeling that the answer lay within him. After all, hadn't she been protecting him since the beginning? Hadn't their connection grown stronger with each passing encounter? Whatever the ritual demanded, Leo suspected it would require more from him than he had ever imagined. The werewolf girl seemed equally burdened. Though her injuries were healing, her demeanor had shifted. She no longer avoided Leo. Instead, she lingered near his cabin during the day, watching him with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. Her golden eyes told a story words never could, that she cared deeply for him, perhaps more than she let on. But there was also guilt, as though she believed herself responsible for whatever price they might have to pay. On the night before the full moon, Leo sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The werewolf girl rested nearby, curled up on the floor like a loyal companion. For a long time, neither spoke. The weight of what lay ahead hung heavy in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. Finally, Leo broke the silence. "Do you think we can really do this?" he asked softly, glancing at her. "Break the curse, I mean." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I believe so," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But not without cost." Leo sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I don't care about the cost. If it means you're free, if it means we both get to move forward, then it's worth it." Her gaze softened, and for a moment she looked as though she might say more. Instead, she simply rested her head on her paws, closing her eyes. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and with it, the answers they sought. When the full moon rose the following night, the forest transformed. Moonlight bathed the clearing in a silvery glow, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. The stone circle where Leo had first uncovered the symbols now pulsed faintly with energy, its carvings glowing softly as if alive. It was here that the ritual would take place. Leo and the werewolf girl arrived together, their steps synchronized despite the tension crackling between them. The black-furred werewolf awaited them, standing tall and imposing at the center of the circle. Its presence was both comforting and intimidating, a reminder of the power they were about to confront. "The time has come," the black werewolf said, its voice deep and resonant. "Are you prepared?" Leo nodded firmly, stepping forward. "Tell me what to do." The creature studied him intently, then turned its gaze to the werewolf girl. "The ritual requires the ultimate act of selflessness. One of you must offer something irreplaceable, a piece of your soul, your essence, your very being, to break the chain." Leo swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at the werewolf girl, who was watching him with wide, fearful eyes. "It's okay," he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "I'll do it." "No," she protested, stepping toward him. "You've already done so much. This is my burden, not yours." "It's ours," Leo countered gently but firmly. "We faced everything together, and we'll finish this the same way." For a moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, she lowered her head in acknowledgement. Tears glistened in her golden eyes, but she didn't argue further. With a nod, the black werewolf began the ritual. It instructed Leo to stand at one end of the stone circle while the werewolf girl took her place at the opposite side. As they positioned themselves, the air grew thick with energy, crackling like static electricity. The symbols on the stones flared brighter, illuminating the clearing in an otherworld. "Lie light. Speak your vow," the black werewolf commanded, its voice echoing through the forest. "Declare what you are willing to give." Leo took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I offer my safety," he said, his voice clear and unwavering. "My peace. Whatever ties bind her to this curse, I will bear them myself if it means she is free." The werewolf girl gasped, her expression a mixture of shock and anguish. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You can't." But Leo held her gaze, his resolve unshakable. "Yes, I can. And I will." As the words left his lips, the stones erupted in a blinding flash of light. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a surge of energy coursed through the clearing. Leo felt it immediately, a searing pain radiating through his body, as though invisible chains were wrapping around him. He staggered, clutching his chest, but refused to fall. Across the circle, the werewolf girl cried out, her form shimmering as the curse began to unravel. Her fur receded, her claws retracted, and slowly she transformed fully into her human form for the first time. She collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face as the weight of centuries fell away. When the light finally faded, Leo stood trembling but alive. The pain subsided, leaving behind only exhaustion. Before him, the werewolf girl, now human, looked up at him with awe and gratitude. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Why?" Leo managed a weak smile, sinking to his knees beside her. "Because you saved me first. Because no one should carry a burden like that alone." For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the bond between them stronger than ever. Then, tentatively, she reached out and touched his hand. Her touch was warm, human, and filled with hope. The black werewolf stepped forward, its massive form casting a shadow over them. "The curse is broken," it declared. "But remember, freedom comes with responsibility. Use it wisely." With that, it turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Leo and the newly freed woman alone under the moonlight. In the weeks that followed, life changed dramatically for both of them. The mysterious figures that had haunted the forest vanished, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The woods felt lighter, freer, as though they too had been released from the curse. The woman, whose name, she revealed, was Amara, began adjusting to her new life. With Leo's help, she learned how to navigate the human world, rediscovering joys she hadn't experienced in centuries. In turn, Leo found purpose beyond his solitude, his days filled with laughter and companionship he hadn't known he craved. Though scars remained, physical and emotional, they served as reminders of the journey they'd shared. Together, they vowed to protect the forest, ensuring that no one else would suffer under the weight of such a curse.